The second role in Final Fantasy XIV that we're going to be talking about is the role of the healer. For many, healing may be just as or more stressful than tanking. For others, there's a sense of power to the role. Having control over who lives and dies is a great responsibility. In this video, we'll discuss the 3 current healers in Final Fantasy XIV, give some general tips, and talk about some upcoming changes to the role. If you want to start out Final Fantasy XIV as a healer, you have 2 options, Conjurer and Arcanist, but there's a catch. Arcanist is a DPS class, so how is it a healer? Let me explain. Arcanist is a bit of a special class in Final Fantasy XIV in that it actually branches out into 2 separate jobs rather than just one. If you start the game as an Arcanist, you can actually unlock both the Scholar and Summoner jobs at level 30. Since they're both technically Arcanist, leveling one of them also levels the other one. Now that doesn't mean just because you level Summoner from 30 to 80 you'll automatically know how to play Scholar, which we'll talk about more in a few minutes, so be warned. When you hit level 30 and complete your job specific quest on either of these classes, Conjurer becomes White Mage and Arcanist becomes Scholar. White Mages channel the power of nature and the elementals to heal, mend, and protect. They wield staves and are the most pure healer in the game, with more off-global burst healing options and higher healing potency abilities than the other healing jobs. Some of their actions include Holy, an area of effect attack that stuns enemies, Assize, an off-global ability that damages enemies and heals allies, Benediction, which heals an ally completely, and Temperance, which increases healing potency and reduces incoming damage on nearby allies. Scholars are another class of healer known as a shield healer. This distinction will become more clear with the introduction of Sage and a healing rework in Endwalker, but for now, Scholar is the primary shield healer in the game. Armed with a summoned fairy and the knowledge of the art of war, Scholars have to be able to read a fight, shielding allies and preventing damage before it even happens. Scholar actions are things like Ether Flow, which restores MP and gives you 3 stacks of Ether Flow, which allows the use of more powerful abilities. Change Stratagem, which increases the rate of critical hits on an enemy. Lustrate, a high potency burst of healing, and Whispering Dawn, healing over time to all nearby allies thanks to your fairy companion. When you get to Ishgard at the beginning of Heavensward, you can take on a quest to start the Astrologian job. Though the job will likely be receiving a fair amount of changes in Endwalker, it currently functions as a hybrid healer capable of decent healing as well as shielding. By drawing ether from the stars to manipulate fate, Astrologians bend cosmic energies to not only heal and shield but also to buff their allies. Their abilities are Draw and Play, which draws a card or plays a held card to buff an ally, Celestial Opposition, which heals nearby allies and grants healing over time or a shield depending on your stance, Collective Unconscious, a dome of energy that gives damage reduction and healing over time in an area, and Earthly Star, a delayed ability that charges up over time before healing allies and damaging enemies. In Final Fantasy XIV, healing is a bit different than it is in other games. In World of Warcraft, for example, healers are expected to primarily be focused on healing the other party members and keeping the tank alive. This doesn't change in Final Fantasy XIV, but encounters are balanced around healers doing damage and contributing to the overall DPS. Each healing job has a damage over time ability, as well as a single target and an AoE damage ability, and these are vital for clearing most content. In addition, healers each have heal over time abilities, like Regen or Aspected Benefic, and a special action called Ezina that clears certain status effects. Heal over time abilities should pretty much always be active during a pull. Simply target the tank, use the ability, and check back in 18 seconds or so to reapply. Being sure to use these abilities makes healing so much easier. It saves your MP by constantly healing the target, and often will make up for auto attacks from bosses almost entirely on its own. It's important to remember though, that if you use any healing actions before the tank has a chance to pull, you'll be immediately placed at the top of the enmity list. If this happens, don't worry, just run to the tank so that any enemies will be drawn near them and they can take aggro pretty quickly. Ezina is a useful ability that I feel isn't explained very well in game. Debuffs can be killer, especially somewhere like Aurum Vale where a wrong move can end with a target covered in them. Not all debuffs can be cleansed. Some of them just have to run out their timer, or occasionally the target has to perform a special mechanic to get rid of it. Ezina can be used on any sort of debuff that has a white bar over top of it. If you see a debuff icon on a party member's health bar that has this ticking white timer, a quick Ezina cast will take care of the problem. This is something you really need to pay attention to because stacking debuffs or certain poisons may be strong enough to nullify your heals over time or weaken the target in other ways that make your job much harder. The most important part of healing is to just remember to be proactive, not reactive. It takes some getting used to, and it's hard to know how before you learn a fight, but if a tank takes a tank buster and loses 70% of their HP, or a strong raid-wide attack goes off and you didn't see it coming, it can be pretty chaotic to get everyone back to a safe amount of health. Use your mitigations, have AoE healing effects ready to go, and just pay attention. While there's a bit more to healing, like positioning, job-specific mechanics, and whether or not rescue is a toxic action, you'll learn these skills through experience. Focus on healing first and doing damage second. Learn how you like to position your user interface to keep your eyes on important information, and just do your best to stay alive. If the healer isn't alive, no one else is alive, except for paladins. Happy healing! Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you like what you saw, please remember to subscribe, hit the bell icon, it really helps me out and it lets you know when I upload a new video. If you're enjoying these beginner guide to Final Fantasy XIV videos, be sure to leave a comment and let me know what you want to see, what you had trouble with when you were a Sprout, or what you're currently having trouble with as a Sprout. I'll do my best to cover it in a future video. Thanks for watching.